I had been practicing for months. Every evening after my shift at the diner, I'd pull the tables to the side of our tiny living room, plug in the old Bluetooth speaker I bought secondhand, and rehearse the same routine over and over until my legs ached. This recital wasn't just some school performance. It was the audition for a full scholarship at a performing arts college 2 states away. If I nailed it, I could finally leave this house, leave them, and maybe never come back. But in my family, wanting something for myself was an open invitation for cruelty. I woke up that morning early, the air already heavy with the smell of burned toast and cigarette smoke. My mother was at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone, her nails tapping against the chipped ceramic mug. She didn't look up. My dad was sitting opposite her, watching some loud sports recap on TV, a beer already in his hand despite it being 8 a.m. "You're up early," Mom muttered without interest. "Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video?" "I have to be," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "The recital is today." That made Dad look over, not with pride never pride, but with that half smirk that meant he was already winding up for something cruel. "Oh, right, your little twirling show," he said. "You gonna spin around like a wind-up doll for people who don't even know your name?" "It's an audition, Dad," I corrected. "If I get in—" "If," he cut me off sharply. "Don't waste our time talking about things that aren't gonna happen." Mom laughed under her breath like his words were just common sense. I bit down on mine. The only way to survive in this house was to keep moving and keep your mouth shut. I made myself a piece of toast and went back to my room. The dress was hanging on my closet door. Midnight blue, knee-length, with soft chiffon that moved like water when I turned. I'd bought it months ago with tips, hiding the purchase from them until now. I slipped it on, careful not to snag the fabric, and tied my hair into a sleek bun. For a moment in the mirror, I almost looked like someone who belonged on stage. I should have known better than to walk out into the living room like that. Dad's eyes landed on me first. He set his beer on the arm of the couch, tilted his head, and let out a low whistle, not the good kind. "Well, look at you," he said slowly, "trying to dress like you're someone important." "It's for the recital," I said, adjusting my bun. "We're supposed to be there early for warm-up." "You mean you're going to go and embarrass yourself in front of strangers?" he said, leaning forward. "But hey, at least your legs work. For now." I didn't understand what he meant until I tried to walk past him toward the door. It happened so fast. One moment I was moving, the next his boot came out and swept both my legs from under me. My knee hit the floor with a sharp crack, pain shooting straight up my thigh. I gasped, grabbing the edge of the couch to keep from falling flat. Dad leaned back, grinning like a schoolyard bully. "Now they match your life," he said. "Broken." Mom didn't even ask if I was okay. She sipped her coffee and said, "Well, maybe you can limp through your little show. They might give you pity points." The room tilted around me. The sting of humiliation burned hotter than the pain in my knee. They didn't care that this was my one chance. They didn't care that every practice, every late-night routine, every dream I dared to hold was for this day. I got up slowly, ignoring the throbbing pain, and walked to the door without another word. But inside, I was shaking not from hurt, but from something darker, sharper. I knew right then, whatever happened next, I was done letting them decide how my story ended. The walk to the community center felt longer than usual, my right knee screaming with every step. By the time I got there, I could already see the other dancers warming up inside through the glass doors, their parents sitting in neat rows along the wall, chatting softly, holding flowers and cameras. I limped through the entrance, clutching my small dance bag. The receptionist gave me a concerned look. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Just tripped," I lied. "I'm fine." I wasn't fine. My leg felt like it was swelling under the skin, each stretch making me grit my teeth. But I knew if I told the organizers what really happened, they'd pull me from the performance. I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything. Backstage was a blur of bodies, sequins flashing, music playing from someone's phone, the faint smell of hairspray in the air. My friend Lila came over, her eyes widening as she saw me adjusting my knee wrap. "Whoa, what happened?" she whispered. "Home," I said. That was all she needed to hear. Her expression softened into something between pity and quiet rage, but she didn't press. The minutes ticked down. One dancer after another went on stage, graceful under the bright lights. Applause filled the hall between each performance, the kind that was polite but encouraging. My slot was last to the closer. When the stagehand called my name, I stepped out into the light. The audience looked bigger than I remembered from rehearsals, faces blending together into a blur, but I spotted them instantly, my parents. Back row. Not clapping. Not smiling. Dad with his arms folded like he was watching a boring movie. Mom texting, not even glancing at me. The music began. I forced my body into motion, each turn sending a sharp pulse through my injured knee. I pushed harder, ignoring the throbbing, ignoring them. The audience wasn't here to see my pain. They were here to see beauty, precision, art, and I was determined to give them that, even if it cost me. Halfway through, the pain spiked so sharply I nearly lost my footing. The gasp from the crowd cut through the music. I steadied myself, pushing forward until the last note rang out. My final pose felt like it lasted forever, my knee trembling, my chest heaving. The applause came, loud, stronger than I expected. Some people even stood. I bowed, swallowing the ache in my throat. But then I heard it. Dad's voice, just loud enough to carry across the hall. Guess the limp was part of the act. A few people turned toward the sound. My face burned. Mom laughed beside him, shaking her head like I was some pitiful thing to be mocked. I held my bow a moment longer, then walked off stage as calmly as I could. Back in the dressing room, I sat on the bench, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Sweat clung to my temples, my lipstick slightly smudged. I didn't see a failure. I saw someone who had survived the first strike and was still standing. Barely. But standing. The scholarship judge came in, a tall woman with silver hair and a clipboard. She smiled warmly. "You have beautiful technique," she said, "but I can tell you were in pain. If you'd like to reschedule for a private audition, I'll make sure you get one." Her kindness almost undid me. I thanked her, voice tight, and nodded. She left me with a business card. When I walked out of the center, the sun was already setting. My parents were leaning against the car, waiting. I approached slowly, still clutching my bag. "Well," Dad said, "that was something. Guess you proved me wrong. You can still dance even with a busted leg. Not well, but still." Mom smirked. "Good thing you don't have to worry about that college now. Saves us all some trouble." That's when it clicked. They wanted me to fail. They had always wanted me to fail. Not because they didn't believe in me, but because they needed me to stay small, to stay home, to stay under their control. I got in the back seat without a word, but my mind wasn't on their insults anymore. It was on the card in my bag, and on a new plan that had started forming the second I realized this wasn't about dancing anymore. This was about never letting them see me broken again. 2 weeks passed before I saw them again. Not because they were busy, but because I made sure to disappear into the spaces they never thought I'd fit. The scholarship judge's card wasn't just a courtesy. I called her the morning after the recital, my voice steady, my tone calm. She arranged for me to meet her at a private studio 2 towns over. No audience, no whispers from the back row, no laughter from the people who'd built their joy on my humiliation. I poured myself into that performance. Every turn was sharper, every landing more precise, every expression more raw. The silver-haired judge didn't clap when I finished. She stood and walked toward me like she was looking at something rare. "You're in," she said simply. I didn't ask about the tuition. I didn't need to. But my plan wasn't just to leave. Leaving would give them the satisfaction of thinking they'd finally gotten rid of me. No. I wanted them to watch me walk away on the legs my father tried to take from me and know they'd never get close enough to hurt me again. I started small, quiet. At home, I became impossible to read. No reaction to the digs, no flinches when Dad muttered, "Guess you're limping for attention now." No anger when Mom told relatives on speakerphone, She's just wasting her time with all this dance nonsense. I moved my important things out of the house piece by piece. My costumes, my savings jar, even my framed childhood photo from under the TV all gone before they realized. They didn't notice. They never did. Then came the night I was waiting for the dinner with their friends, the important people they were always desperate to impress. I dressed neatly, not for them, but for the part I needed to play. Halfway through the meal, Dad smirked across the table. "So, are you done with your little hobby yet? Or should we start looking for wheelchairs in advance?" The table laughed politely, unsure if it was a joke or just cruelty. I smiled. "Actually, I got into a full scholarship program. I'm moving next week." Silence. Forks paused midair. Mom's smile cracked into something jagged. "A scholarship? For you?" "Yeah," I said. "They called me exceptional. Guess they didn't see the waste of time you've been talking about." I let that hang in the air before pulling a small envelope from my bag. Inside was a copy of my acceptance letter and an invitation to my first national competition, one they could only attend if they purchased VIP tickets months in advance. I slid it across the table. "Front row seats," I said softly, "if you can afford them." Dad's jaw tightened. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said, leaning forward just enough so they had to hear me. "I know I am." I stood, thanked their friends for dinner, and walked out. That night, I didn't go home. I went to Lila's where my packed bags were already waiting. They called, they texted. The first messages were angry, then desperate, then silent. Months later, at that national competition, I saw them again. They hadn't bought the front row tickets. They stood at the very back of the auditorium, far enough that they couldn't touch the moment. I danced anyway, every movement deliberate, every step a reminder. When the standing ovation came, I didn't look at the crowd. I looked straight at them. Their faces were pale, their mouths tight, and for the first time in my life, they looked small. I bowed, rose, and turned my back on them the way they had done to me so many times. And I kept walking, my legs carrying me farther than they ever thought they could. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.